Hi, everyone, and welcome to our masterclass today, where I am going to talk about guarding your heart, and I'm going to help you create the essential plan to prevent heart disease and thrive, right? So, I like to say, because those of you that know me, like your heart is like the CEO of your body, it is your engine. It is the musculature that pumps and actually brings circulation, all of your blood, your lymph, your venous system. So it's so important. It is like the master regulator. And oftentimes, what I find is even emotionally, like we just talked about briefly before we hit record, one of an amazing patient that just left has seen so much. A house burned down locally, not the Palisades. Animal having epilepsy. Just like, having a really hard time with what's going on in this world. And so now it's like this armor is on her. So what did we work with today? We're going to work with EMDR and heart coherence and really get connected to the heart, because we could tell, even though her heart sounded great, her blood pressure was good, she doesn't have hypertension, we fixed her brain aneurysm. I didn't, but she went through surgery. It's her energy is saying, I'm not safe. What is the next trauma? So that's really hard on the heart as well. So we don't often think about the emotional piece of the heart. We only think about the physical. And we think about, oh, we got our labs back, the cholesterol's high. Oh, we have inflammation in our body. That sort of thing. But hopefully I'm going to take you through like the whole process today on what that looks like. So think about the heart is your CEO. It is the main, what do you call it? Person that actually like regulates your heart. The conductor. I just couldn't get it out. The conductor, right? So every 34 seconds, did you realize that somebody in the US has a heart attack? Every 34 seconds. I don't know about you, but that's a lot. That is a lot of people having heart attacks every 34 seconds. Then, on top of that, with that statistic, every 3.5 minutes, somebody dies from a stroke. I'm assuming everybody knows what a stroke is, and I'm assuming obviously most of us know what a heart attack is. A stroke, just so you know, is a plaque that is released and then it goes into the brain and it creates neurological challenges. Like that's the best way to describe it, right? It blocks, it usually comes off of the carotid. So I always like people to understand, because we hear stroke, we hear heart attack, we hear high cholesterol, but like, what does that really mean, right? So what if I told you that these are preventable? That if you take, unless it's genetic, let's push genetic aside right now. So if you know you have a genetic challenge, there's ways that we can help you. But if you don't, what if I told you the truth that these are preventable? That you can actually take control to optimize your heart health and extend your lifespan naturally when you're living in your body, right? Like that is possible. And so when we take you through these steps today, I want you to really think about like, I want you to use your gut. And if you know your cholesterol numbers, I want you to use your gut and see like, and just really be like, am I doing these pieces that Dr. Donnie is talking about? Right? Am I stepping into my true health as my heart being the engine? So, if you are struggling with heart disease or high blood pressure or stroke that has affected your loved one, drop me in the chat. Let me know where you're at and drop me in the chat so I can kind of get a pulse on. Now, I know Meredith had already dropped that she's with cholesterol, so we're working through that. She's got that piece on on her mind. Anybody else, like Anne or Pam? Okay. And I get it if you can't engage, but I love engagement. So my goal is by the time we're done today, that you'll know exactly what to look for and how you can optimize your heart function, actually prevent disease, and create longevity naturally, right? So let's start with that overall picture so that you understand what the heart is, because I just painted a little bit of a picture, but I want to go deep. So, is it being the CEO of your body? Your heart isn't just a pump, it dictates how every organ performs. So, if I break down the cardiovascular system, do we realize that the heart and lungs work together? So the heart brings oxygenated blood all through the body. And then the venous system, the arteries, that brings oxygenated blood. Then the venous system then brings deoxygenated blood, brings it to the lungs, and then we oxygenate it. And we need this for every cell in our body. So again, it's like the lungs, they're oxygenating your blood. We're sending it to the heart through the arteries. We're nourishing the brain, the muscles, and the tissues, and we're moving in that system consistently. And the heart is doing the pumping to do that. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Now, if we do deoxygenated blood, the blood is returning to the heart, the lungs, and then we're reoxygenating it for another cycle. So think about this. On an average, this is what I learned in medical school. So I'm digging deep here because it's been a long time that I've studied this, because I take for granted that it's just in my mind. But your heart beats about 100,000 times a day. That's a lot. And on top of that, it's pumping about 2,000 gallons of blood. Did you guys realize that your heart works that hard? Because when I learned that, I did not really know that. And I was like, wow, like 2,000 gallons of blood a day and our heart beating 100,000 times a day, right? So that blows my mind, or it blew my mind. And so now it's kind of in my brain there as like a number that I get to share with all of you. So if we go to some of the systems that are causing challenges that we talked about, because we're talking about guarding our heart, some of the silent killers that we think about are high blood pressure. And I want to talk about the truth about cholesterol, because we've all been taught on so many levels that cholesterol is totally bad, right? That it's not, we need to take statins, we need to get our cholesterol down, so I want to kind of like really talk deep about this and then talk about what could be ways that your cholesterol is elevated. Are we good? Okay. So, um, if we talk about high blood pressure, for example, 1 in 3 adults have high blood pressure. And when my patients come in, they don't even know it. And by the time a patient gets to me, many of the patients are scared to go to the doctors, or scared to find out what they're going to find out. They know they want answers. They know like they're not feeling like their best self, but they truly don't want to go to the doctors and just be there for 10 or 15 minutes, not get to advocate for themselves and ask the questions that they want, because we're moving people in and out so quick, and then just be told they have high blood pressure and here's a medication. I don't know if that's you. If that's you, drop me in the chat. But I listen to this day in and day out, but yet there's so many amazing primary care physicians out there and doctors doing an amazing job, but many of them are tired and overwhelmed and they have to see so many patients. And those that me, my vision is to heal chronic disease in our country. And by doing these, I'm showing up for each and every one of you after I've had a long clinic day because I love doing it. So what happens in high blood pressure? It damages the arteries, it begins to thicken the heart walls, and then it's going to increase our risk for stroke, for heart failure, and kidney disease. So high blood pressure is not just a salt issue like they talk about. It's an inflammation and insulin issue. So cholesterol, you're going to hear me find out, again, if it's non-genetic, is a sugar problem. So I will tell you, I would say 80% of the patients that come to the clinic here that have high cholesterol, when I pull back their sugar, their cholesterol balances, right? Because they don't have a genetic challenge, right? So we're constantly trying to get that in check for them. So if you could drop in the chat, has your doctor ever told you that your blood pressure is borderline? Drop me in the chat or elevated. No? Okay. I'm just trying to get a pulse where you guys are all at. And then those of you that are listening to the replay, feel free to jump into the community and let me know. Like these questions, you can drop in there and I can answer them as well. So the truth, cholesterol is not a fat problem. It is a sugar problem. Most doctors are going to tell you in order to lower your cholesterol, but cholesterol alone does not cause heart disease. So I want to break this down. LDL, VLDL, HDL. What do these numbers really mean? Right? Because really the reality is often when you go to the doctor, like first of all, like no pun intended, what breaks my heart is we don't always get lipid panels anymore from the medical world. We might get a basic panel. We might get a CBC without diff. We might get a urinalysis, but we might get vitamin D. Like I know if a doctor's thinking again, there's no judgment here, but very rarely do I see a cholesterol panel. And if I do see a cholesterol panel, it's LDL, total cholesterol, triglycerides, and HDL. And they never talk to you about the ratio of that. And then people will say, well, what's my bad cholesterol? What's my good cholesterol? H is happy. It's happy and it's good. So HDL, and that's how I learned it in school. And that's how I'm always going to learn it. And that's how I'm going to teach you. LDL is the opposite. I used to call it the loser cholesterol, but I don't think that's so appropriate, but that's the cholesterol that can cause the problems, right? But VLDL is very low density lipoproteins and triglycerides. Those are the ones that can cause the plaquing. However, we don't do even a deeper dive into the cholesterol like I do, right? So if I'm looking at cholesterols, I'm looking at a much deeper panel. I also want to know what your lipoprotein A is and your ApoE. These are genotypes. Markers that your doctor probably doesn't test, but really should, right? Omega 3s. You've got to get that from food. You've got to get that from the outside world. And omega 6, so the omega 3 to omega 6 ratio matter more than the total cholesterol. Bad fats like seed oils and processed foods and high sugars are inflammation. They inflame your arteries. Okay, those are the ones, not necessarily saturated fat. You want to be careful of saturated fats, but I can tell you seed oils, processed foods, and sugars probably cause more havoc on your arteries and inflammation in your body. So, how do I want to take this away so that we get sort of this kind of breakdown? Your cholesterol numbers mean nothing unless you understand the inflammation, the insulin, and the lipoprotein. So when most doctors talk about cholesterol, like we said, they focus on total cholesterol, LDL, HDL. This is simplistic and outdated in my mind, and not a way to assess your cardiovascular risk. It's crucial to go beyond that standard lipid panel and look deeper into markers that tell a story more of your heart health, your inflammation, and your disease risk. I take it one step further and I look at homocysteine and HSCRP. right? So if we look at just total cholesterol, for example, it's not the full picture. That number is simply the sum of LDL, HDL plus 20% of your triglycerides. It tells me very little about your cardiovascular risk. So a high cholesterol, total cholesterol number isn't necessarily bad, right? So if HDL is high and inflammation is low, that's going to offset our total cholesterol. And then LDL, like I said, like we can call it bad. I jokingly said loser cholesterol, but is it really bad? LDL carries cholesterol from the liver to the cells that need it for repair and hormone production. LDL by itself is not necessarily an enemy for you. It's only dangerous if it becomes oxidized or damaged by inflammation and sugar. It gets sticky. So we need to look at the type of LDL particles, big and fluffy versus small and dense. Big and fluffy are like mops. Small and dense are the ones that can cause the plaquing. So we really need to look at what types we're looking at. So like LDL-C, LDL-P. And HDL is actually the cleanup crew, I call it the mop. And there are different forms of HDL that many don't even realize. So HDL carries cholesterol away from the arteries and back to the liver for excretion and reuse. High HDL is generally protective, especially as you begin to age. Like if cholesterol is a little bit higher when you age, I don't have a problem with that. Could be helping you. But if inflammation is high, then HDL function can be impaired. So I don't remember the number on the labs, excuse me for that, because I think it's 45 or higher. My goal of HDL is greater than 65 for optimal heart protection, right? So that's what I look for. Again, those that have been on my lives before, I look at numbers from a functional medicine standpoint, not from a sick cohort system of what the numbers should be. If somebody starts to climb over 235 in cholesterol, then I start to kind of wonder what could be going on in the body to create that. Like that's getting to the root cause. What could be happening? So triglycerides, there is a true sugar connection. They are fat molecules in the blood and they're stored as energy. So high triglycerides tell me that there's high sugar and insulin resistance. What is insulin resistance? It could be prediabetes. It means your body has too much sugar. Your insulin has been released consistently from the pancreas. The sugar has nowhere to go. All your muscles have what it needs for the sugar, and then we become insulin resistant. So, like a scary number for triglycerides above 100 tells me that's a warning sign of metabolic dysfunction. I've seen very high numbers in triglycerides. So back to what we were talking about before, that high cholesterol is a sugar problem, not always a fat problem, because we need healthy omega-3s for our body. So if triglycerides are high, I'm always looking at like how much sugar are you eating? How much starches are you eating? How much processed foods are you eating? Like what is that looking like for you? Right? Um, so you need healthy fat for your brain and your body and your phospholipid bilayer. So I look at those are my patients that when I'm looking at cardiovascular health, I look at what I call an advanced cholesterol panel. So I definitely look at VLDL. That's the true bad cholesterol. That's what I look at as the true bad cholesterol. It is small, it is dense, it carries a triglyceride into the bloodstream. And we know that high VLDL is associated with insulin resistance, like we just talked about, metabolic syndrome, and can cause plaquing. So if VLDL is high, it means there's excess sugar, excess insulin, and the insulin resistance is driving your inflammation. So if I see that, I'm going to go one step further, which we're not talking about here, but I'm also going to look at HSCRP. I might look at CRP, and I'm going to look at ferritin and iron, because ferritin can show me that there's inflammation in the body. So lipoprotein A is the heart attack gene, right? It's a genetic marker for heart disease that most standards tests don't check. So high lipoprotein A means you're at a higher risk for heart attack and stroke. So we want to look at lowering your inflammation, optimizing that omega-3, your healthy fats. We're going to talk about where we can get those from later. Vitamin C, and believe it or not, when I was looking at research the other day and writing this, I didn't realize that you can use lysine as well. So I still need to dig into that, but I wanted to share that because that is new for me. That lysine can help lower inflammation and bring down your LPA. Then we have another marker called apolipoprotein B. This is the key to your LDL particle size. So ApoB measures the total number of LDL particles in the bloodstream. If ApoB is high, it means you have more small, dense LDL particles that can contribute to plaquing. So it means that your LDL is likely inflammatory and should be addressed, and we do address it. So that is ApoB. So we've done lipoprotein A, we've done ApoB, and then ApoA is the HDL function marker. It measures how well HDL is working to clear cholesterol from the arteries. High ApoA is really good, strong heart protection. You want high ApoA to ApoB ratio to ensure that you have a healthy cholesterol balance, right? So hopefully, is everybody on board? Like, I know that's a lot. I wanted you to know the markers, because maybe one of those markers, if you're worried about what you're struggling with, maybe one of those markers you could have evaluated and dig deeper with your practitioner about it and what to do about it. So again, I don't just do a basic lipid panel. I always do a lipid panel, but if I'm concerned about heart health, then I'm going to go deeper. I'm even going to do LDL-C, LDL-P, like deeper markers to actually know really what's going on. So hopefully I'm not losing you because I know it's a lot of clinical information, but I just really want to share that so that you can be empowered with what you know. So we have hidden inflammatory markers that can protect heart attacks and strokes as well. So if your cholesterol looks good, inflammation is the real driver of heart disease. Because I have patients, their cholesterol looks really good, but maybe something else is elevated, right? So these next markers that I'm going to talk about will tell me if your body is inflamed or at a risk for artery damage. So I mentioned HSCRP, which is high sensitive reactive C-reactive protein. To me, that's the fire alarm to heart disease. So if you have HSCRP, it measures your chronic inflammation in the blood vessels. Even if cholesterol is normal, you can have a high HSCRP, right? So a key point is anything above 1.0 is an early warning sign of cardiovascular risk. So knowing these markers are really good because you could have normal cholesterol and you're like, I'm good. But if we don't look at the whole picture of the body from a functional, medicine standpoint, maybe you're not. Maybe that's a struggle for you. Homocysteine is the underestimated stroke risk. It's a byproduct of protein metabolism that at high levels, and I say it's like glass to your arteries. It damages your blood vessels and it can increase stroke risk. So high homocysteine can be linked to deficiencies in B vitamins like B6, B9, B12, right? You want to keep homocysteine. Some people will say below 9. I say really below 6, where I feel like a patient is really good. And this is a test that almost Nobody tests. And when I ask to test it, many practitioners won't test it. And if patients choose to pay out of pocket, unfortunately, it's an expensive test. But I also do genetic tests as well to see if you could have a risk of high homocysteine, so I can kind of back myself out backwards a little bit to get some answers for you, if that makes sense. So just to sum up the cholesterol piece and stop for a minute so I'm not too overwhelming for you all, is there anything that's coming up in the chat and anything that I can like answer right off the bat, or like this is confusing or I don't understand this? If you want to type your questions in the chat before I keep going, I just want to stop because I know that was a lot of information. And see if I can backtrack a little bit. And if you want help, if you want my help through this, my team will drop a link in the chat and you can feel free to reach out to them, because this is like, a lot of the reason why we had a lot of challenges in COVID, because we have a lot of metabolic dysfunction. So if you want to, dive deeper with me and do a deeper dive, click the link in the chat and they will like reach out and connect with you. Or you can you can book today and reach out and see if what kind of support you need. Okay, let's see. Really good question. They may. It might be worth it to see. um Yeah, let's be in conversation with that. That's oftentimes what happens, because let me share with you. So Meredith is wanting some tests that are indicated for her health. And she's advocating for herself. Like I see this a lot. She's advocating for herself to have specific tests done. However, the primary care physician won't do it. Why? They're not trying to be a nudge. Excuse me. They're not trying to be a nudge. But the truth is that if they um, take a lab test and they call for it, and for example, in this case, Meredith goes to get a draw and she has an elevated something, and the primary care physician doesn't know what to do with that, it's what we say CYA. They're covering themselves because they are not trained in that knowledge. So the question was, if I asked a cardiologist and got in with a cardiologist, would I get those tests covered? Like, for example, like under Medicare or even your primary care, right? So that's the real question. That's why working with individuals like myself, if we can get it done, we figure out how to advocate and get it done for you, right? So remember, I'm not treating and diagnosing here, but these, especially with so much heart health out there that we're struggling with, and hence why I'm showing up and supporting you guys, it's so imperative. Like, information is power, and then we'll know which way to turn and we'll know what your risks are. Maybe you have an elevated one of those numbers, but then if we get in the right nutrients for you, maybe those numbers can come down and then we retest and you're in a better place. That's why it's important to know where we're at. It's not to fear us, it's not to scare us. It's like I always say, information is power. So, what are my final takeaways is, if you're feeling like you're struggling with a heart condition or you have a familial, like all of it isn't genetic and all of it is not familial, even though we're told that all the time, I would ask about getting advanced testing, and I would ask on requesting more of an advanced lipid panel like we talked about. ApoB, LPA, HSCRP, and even homocysteine. The other thing I want you to think about is lower your inflammation. This isn't about telling you never to eat sugar again, never to put sugar in your diet, never to eat, processed foods. But I would think about removing processed foods and seed oils. Start to read your labels. And I would start to reduce the amount of sugar that I'm intaking. And I would start looking at really good, healthy omega-3 foods, which are like your fish oils, your flax oils, your raw olive oils, because if you have more omega-3, that's going to balance out your omega-6. Omega-6, you can make that in the body. Omega-3, you've got to get that from the outside world. And most people don't eat enough healthy fats unless I've, got them home. Like hit that energy home to them where you need to get these healthy fats from your diet, right? So you want to prioritize deep sleep, meditation, and breath work. Why? The stress on the heart. You want to supplement wisely. Know what you're taking for targeted nutrients. Don't just take things because somebody told you to take them unless you're working with a valued practitioner that can help you actually, know that's what you need. And then stay proactive around your heart health. It's not about waiting for symptoms to happen and chest pain and things like that. It's actually, about preventing disease before it starts. So now I want to talk about stroke versus heart attack, because now we know kind of what the testing are. And now, or the testing is, I should say, sorry for my English there. So now we want to look at stroke versus heart attack, right? Why did I want to do this? Because I will tell you, there are so many incidences where we could have saved somebody's life. And men and women's symptoms are very different when it comes to like a friend or somebody loved one that you're with and they're experiencing symptoms. So, for example, women's symptoms for heart attack would be fatigue. They may have some jaw pain. They may feel nauseous. They might even have back pain. They often will have left shoulder pain. They could have dizziness. And guess what? Heart attacks in women are mistaken for anxiety and indigestion often. So that's powerful to you. Hopefully you took notes on that. Knowing the symptoms, because there's heart attacks everywhere. I just said 34 seconds, and every 3.5 minutes, somebody dies of a heart attack. So it's like, you gotta move. If this is something that you're struggling with, or you see a loved one. Okay, so men have classic chest pain. They have left arm pain. I'm sorry, women, I said left arm pain. I meant right arm pain. My bad. Sorry, right arm pain for women. Men have left arm pain, and they'll often experience shortness of breath. So those are more classic symptoms that you're probably used to, right? Whereas women have very different symptoms than men. So when we think of stroke symptoms, so those are heart attack symptoms. When I think of stroke symptoms, think about FAST, F-A-S-T. I like to use these when I can. I call it the FAST method. So your face might be drooping. You may have arm weakness. All of a sudden you can't speak. It's time to call 911. So again, F is face, so face drooping, one or the other. Arm weakness, speech difficulty, and 911 is time. So has anybody ever been around a heart attack sort of symptom and sent them to drop an exclamation in the chat if that's you? Have you ever seen that? Have you ever experienced that? Been around a loved one with those sort of symptoms? No? Wow, I can't get you guys to be active today. We got to wake you up. So that's really important. So you can also get on your wall, you can also get stroke and heart attack, like sort of, you can put them in your house somewhere, hang them on your refrigerator, like wherever, so that if you needed to know what the symptoms are, you would know how to take action because the time is really of the essence. So this is what we talked about in the very, very beginning about stress when I shared with that patient. That's really the hidden cause of heart disease. Emotional stress and grief can trigger a heart attack just as much as all the other physical things that we just talked about. We got that? The world is in such chronic stress and it doesn't seem like it's stopping. However, we can stop it by doing meditation and living in our body, right? So this stress and this grief can trigger heart discomfort as much as your poor diet. So if we have chronic stress, we're constantly shooting off cortisol, we end up with arterial inflammation, and then we have a heart attack risk. How many of you have heard of broken heart syndrome? It is a diagnosed condition where you have so much grief you pass. You have a heart attack. It's real. It's often real for individuals that have lived with their partner for long term. They have so much grief they can't handle it. But broken heart syndrome is a real diagnosed condition. So let's do a guided exercise for a moment. I want you to just take 30 seconds to reset your nervous system. Close your eyes if it feels safe. And take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for 4 seconds. And release for 8. Do that a few times. And just take note of how you feel. Like that is one of the easiest ways for you to get into your body. So if I'm feeling stressed and moving through the day and feeling this high cortisol rush, I just take a few minutes to really ground myself and just breathe. Our breath is so powerful for us, and it takes us out of that cortisol rush, and it allows us to stay in our body. And it's just so important for us to be living in our body. Like that patient that I talked about earlier wasn't living in her body and she knows it. So if stress is really controlling your health, like you get to change that. How can you be? What are your ways of being? What kind of identity can you show up and be with to create like peace in your heart, peace in your arteries, peace in your body? It's so important for us to disconnect and even get out in nature and be grounded. Hence why I love what I do. Even if there's a snowstorm out there, it's freezing cold, I get outside and walk and breathe and pray or meditate, whatever your go-to is. So, from that, now that we're grounded, I want to talk about the 5 pillars of a healthy heart as we begin to close up. Again, if you want support and you want to, work with myself and my team, there is a link in the chat. We are more than happy to help you. You don't have to suffer anymore. And just having accountability and connection, like I have a huge heart. I want you all to feel better. So one of the first things I work with patients on is nutrition, and it's not about losing weight. It's about getting healthy, quality nutrition in your body, right? So when we're looking at the heart, this is what I want to talk about. Like you want to ditch those seed oils and processed carbs and sugar. And please don't be eating artificial sweeteners. They're cancer causing, right? I'd rather have you have honey and maple syrup and molasses or just don't do the artificial sweeteners. Begin to add wild caught fishes like salmons and halibuts and um halibut and sardines and water, right? So those are really good healthy fishes. And then avocados is great. It's got really good healthy fat. Nuts like walnuts and almonds, pecans. And then you also want to think about dark leafy greens because that gives you the minerals and the nutrients that you need. You want to move your body daily to keep your arteries elastic. So you can do stretching, you could do strength training, you could go for a walk, walk on a treadmill, walk on your bike on your stationary bike. I don't know what your answer is for your really good exercise, but figure that out for yourself. Stress management. We just showed you one of those that you could actually do. The deep breathing. Know what your HRV is. You can get those on your Whoop, on your there's actually apps out there that will tell you what your HRV is. Meditation, prayer, grounding in your body. Those are ways to like hone in on your stress. Do you know that your heart disease risk will triple if you're not sleeping? Because your heart and your brain and your body repair at night, right? So sleep is so important. And I talk about sleep and sugar all the time online. If you need support around that, like if you're not sleeping and your nervous system is on overdrive, like you need to sleep. And then even look at the advanced testing we talked about, like lipoprotein A, HSCRP, your omega-3 to your omega-6 ratios, your HDL. Drop one thing in the chat that you can improve today. Just one thing. Anybody or everybody. Like, I'm talking to like people that aren't like connecting here. Just think about one thing. If you don't want to drop it in the chat, drop it in the community later or write it down. What's one thing that you can change? I'm here to support you, right? So lastly, this is always the last on my um this is always the last on my list. Supplements, right? We add those in as last once we have your nutrition in a really good place, or if you really need support, then we'll add it in if we know there's items that are imbalanced. Omega-3s, fish oils. I can tell you almost everybody should be on a fish oil. And it should be a really good quality fish oil. And I will tell you that your fish oil should never smell. If it smells, it's rancid, throw it away. Fish oils lower triglycerides because they're omega-3s. They improve your LDLs, improve your LDL particle size, and they reduce inflammation. I'm just giving you numbers. Please don't live in these numbers. Know what you need to take, but an average of 2,000 milligrams a day. However, you can increase what we talked about when we looked at nutrition. You can increase your wild-caught fishes, your avocados, raw extra virgin olive oil, grass-fed meats, cruciferous vegetables, fiber-rich foods like chia seeds and flax seeds. That's the best way to get in your omega-3s. But if you're not doing that and you need more help or you have a risk for cardiovascular disease, think about taking a fish oil. You want to avoid your seed oils like we talked about. So those are like canola oils, soybean, corn oils. Alleviate and avoid processed carbohydrates, refined sugars, and trans fats. Okay? Vitamin D3 and K2. That will help direct your calcium to bone instead of arteries. Most people just take D3, they don't take K2. And so you want to know what you're taking. Again, don't just take things to take things because you're like, oh, I was on this live with Dr. Donahue all about guarding our health. And she suggested I take 5,000 vitamin D and 180 micrograms of K2, for example. Please, like, know what you're taking. I can feel confident that most people are deficient in magnesium unless you're taking it. Magnesium actually relaxes your blood vessels and it will help lower your blood pressure. And anywhere from 122 to 250 milligrams a day. Magnesium glycinate, like there's several different kinds of magnesium, so you want to know what kind you're taking. I use magnesium citrate in heart cases, but I also know that it can be a little aggressive to the body, so I'm conscious and I'm following the patients with it. Magnesium glycinate, on the other hand, is really good for your brain, about 400 milligrams a day, and it also helps you regulate your blood pressure and prevents arterial stiffness. CoQ10 is another one that I love. Minimum 100 to 200 milligrams a day. I always say take vitamin E with it as well because it's better absorbable. It's really critical for supporting your energy production in the heart, and it lowers your oxidative stress. So it's so good for this energy. If you're having insulin resistance, like we talked about, and you need to regulate your blood sugar and improve your lipid profile and or improve your hemoglobin A1C, which is a diabetic marker, a pre-diabetic marker, I should say, you want to do 500 milligrams about 2 times a day, or you can do one in the morning, one at night. So it really helps you regulate your blood sugar. And then green tea extract is one that I wanted to add, and you can also take it, but drinking 500 milligrams a day would be a lot. It's a really good antioxidant protection for your arteries, and it's anti-cancer, right? Because inflammation starts somewhere and causes you to go somewhere, right? So you really want to have protection for your arteries. You don't want the oxidation. You want to make sure you're getting antioxidants in. Some antioxidants in food are the colors. So like the blueberries, the cherries, the raspberries, the blackberries. Those are really good antioxidants. And people will say I should drink wine. I say no. You do what works for you. Wine, to me, wine isn't protecting your heart, but they'll tell you in Italy it is, and here it is, and we justify it. But it's also acetaldehyde that hits the liver. So I want to open it up for any questions that any of you may have. And again, if you want support at all, there is a link in the chat that you can click on. And we are happy to help support each and every one of you. And I'm happy to meet with you as well. And my team will guide you on like what works. Because at the end of the day, my goal is to heal chronic disease for each and every one of you. So is there any questions that I can answer at all? I'm going to look and see what came in the chat. Sleep. Yeah. Yeah, and sleep is so important to get that under control. I just did a whole talk on sleep to 400 people on Friday. And it shocks me every time the amount of people that are struggling with sleep, and we don't talk about how important it really is. Like your brain heals when you sleep, your system is in a better place when it sleeps, your cortisol comes down, you're more in a grounded state when you sleep. It's just so balancing for the body, and it's really, the cardiovascular, the nervous system, when you deep sleep. And if you're not sleeping well, one of the things that you might want to look at is, are you eating nutrient whole dense foods throughout the day? Are you eating enough protein and healthy fats? Or are you eating too much sugars and starches, or your energy is dropping and waxing and waning throughout the day? That could tell you that you're not eating enough. And another thing that could be reacted causing sleepless nights is maybe there's too much sugar and starches in the body, so your cortisol's dropping at night and your body's going to wake you. I mean, sorry, your blood sugar drops at night, your cortisol kicks in and it wakes you up. So that could be what's happening. So you always want to assess, like, what am I eating throughout the day? Because that could be the cause. And then the other piece you want to think about when it comes to sleep is, am I getting deep REM sleep? And am I going to bed at the same time every night, waking up at the same time every morning? Um, am I keeping my screens away from my head at night and shutting my phone off? Because believe it or not, blue light and radiation can keep you awake. Um, is your temperature in your bedroom too warm? Do you need to cool it down? You want it to have it on the cooler side? There's all sorts of theories like 68, 70, 72, 64. You have to figure out what works for you. So you want to cool. And then are there any lights or anything in the bedroom that could be keeping you up? So that's some of the things that I talk about. You can also, I do have a sleep guide that I can drop in the chat if you want to download that as well, if you want to give me a minute. I know this is heart health, but this might be helpful for you. That's why these lives are great. Like, I try to meet you where you're at. So this might be helpful to you. Let me drop it in the chat. My view on melatonin. I don't mind melatonin. I'm okay with it. We do want to remember that it is a hormone. So how melatonin works, just so you know, you've got cortisol that you want it, higher in the morning, not high, but higher in the morning. And then we come down and we drop off throughout the day. And then we have a blip. And then cortisol drops off and melatonin kicks in. And melatonin is your calming, sleep relaxing hormone, right? And so then the brain, the pituitary, is releasing the melatonin and telling you to go to sleep and rest and be in peace. So I like to test melatonin in a hormone profile to know where you're at, because you might not have a melatonin problem. But if it's something that's helping you sleep for now, but it is a hormone. So that's my take on melatonin. There's always a time and a place for something, but getting to the root cause of why we're not sleeping. And I know you mentioned sleep, Meredith, was a challenge for you right now. So, doing the meditations like you're doing, and really, like, and going through, like, when you're feeling stressed, taking time to breathe. Um, and don't watch stressful TV or listen to stressful things, like, before you go to bed. It's just, you just want to get into that grounding fashion. So can I answer any other questions again? We're going to drop a link in the chat. If you want to jump on a call, Shannon's more than happy to get on a call with you and connect, and help, like, guide you through this information, like what we talked about. You can also jump into our community. So let me find that for you. I don't have that handy. So, but if you want to give me a moment, I'm happy to drop that in the chat. And let's see. You can jump over the community and ask questions. Okay. Oops. Hold on. So here is the link to join the community. You can just create your own login, and we're happy to answer any questions over there. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. It seems like nobody else has any questions. I'm sending you so much love. You're welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure to each and every one of you. Keep an eye out, because we're going to be doing some webinars and lives throughout the month. And I'm also live on the online live doc show twice a week as well, Mondays and Fridays. So that's all put in the panel. You are welcome. I'm sending you all so many blessings and so much love, and have a beautiful rest of your afternoon or evening, depending on where you're coming from. Bye, guys. Take care.